So my name is Lenore Moore. I'm teaching a course called the Investor and Realtor. I'm actually doing a 2-year certification course that I designed and created to teach investors how to work with investors and work with investment properties, but mostly to make sure that you as a realtor, this is from realtor to realtor, that you're having your own investment plan. So through working with investors, through that process of working with investment properties, I mean, that's how we really learn how to invest ourselves, right? Because it's not only about building legacy and long-term wealth for other people, but it's really about doing it for our own families and our own legacy. So I'm so excited today that you showed up. Hopefully you'll take away a little bit of something today from our crash course. And it's called a crash course because we're going to touch on a little bit of everything. A little bit about who I am and kind of why I'm here. So life before real estate, I was born and raised in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. And then I moved to Los Angeles for 20 years, raised and had my daughter out there and went to school, and I was in film and television. So I've always been in some sort of creative kind of numbers and creativity. I've always been combining those my whole career. And then I did marketing and sales and branding. And then I started in real estate because I actually started it organically by buying a house for my daughter when she was, before she was born. And I renovated the whole house. And that was about 20 years ago. And everybody's like, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't know, it just felt natural, it just felt easy. And I renovated it top to bottom while I was 7 months pregnant. So I just hired a couple of crews. I hired a couple of guys, and I have to move myself off of myself over here. It's bugging me. And so I hired a couple of guys, and in the morning I would go and I'd pick up all the supplies at Home Depot. I'd come back, check in on them at lunch, come back at dinner time, and I'd go over the whole house again and pick up the supply list for the next day. And I did things like blew out walls and changed the kitchen layout and put a door in and added a bathroom and converted. I mean, I did a pretty big job for never doing something like that, but it just felt very natural for me. My dad's an architect. Maybe those are some of the things that just kind of was in my blood. So that's kind of how it started a long time ago. And then I actually officially launched my first company in 2016 called Pure Light Properties. And this is just one of the renovations that I had done. It was a little ranch, single-story ranch in New Jersey that we turned into a 2-story colonial. And that's your before and after picture. That was a big one. Learned a lot on this. I call this my beautiful learning lesson because I learned a lot on this one. I actually ran 14 subs at some point because I fired 2 contractors, not just one, but 2. So yes, money was definitely spent on this project, but it turned out so nice. And I bought it for $368 and sold it for $799, $762, a little unclear with the numbers, in the 700 range. And that was one of the ones that really kind of helped me understand construction and how to position when it came to what did the renovations look like, what do you need in an area. This was another one I did. This was also New Jersey. This is at 254 Midway. That was the before on the left and the after on the right. And that's the interior. If you really look closely at this picture, not much was done when it came to this room. It was really about paint, and that flooring was the original hardwood floors. We just sanded it, stained it, polyed it, and that was it. So this was an interesting room because of that. Now the bathroom's redesigned. If you can see, the vanity was flipped in a different position. The toilet was actually moved, right? So there's some things that we do in order to maximize space. And then on the back of that wall, I added a master bedroom. So we just ganged up all the plumbing and put a master bathroom on the opposite side of that wall. So those are some of the things that we looked at while we were renovating things. But out of those 2 properties, I call it the necessity creates invention, creates invention, because I had to figure out, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? And what was amazing was out of all of that sort of learning, wonderful learning lessons and losing money through it all, I became a realtor. And I decided I needed to have more control. I needed to have more education. I needed to have more understanding from the perspective of a realtor. So I was never going to be a realtor. So this launched me in a whole different way. I'm like, okay, I'll just get my real estate license. And I started out with a team of, like 5 people here at Keller Williams back in November of 2018. And we also, we looked at construction management and project management, and that kind of evolved. My team went from 5 to just 2 of us or 3 of us with an admin. So shifts and changes happened during that time period, and it really was about kind of honing the systems. And then COVID hit, and when COVID hit, I went down and kind of looked at what can I really focus on, what do I love to do, and it really came up to be about educating and really just taking everything that I learned from Pure Light Properties on the renovation side to Pure Light Reinvest, which is the new company that was born for the realtors. And then I created a course called the Investment Realtor Certification Course. And that kind of puts everything together, right? It's all about, renovation and construction, and how do you move somebody through that pipeline into how do you be a realtor and really serve investors and really work with investment properties. How do you build confidence that way? How do you build expertise? And so the Investment Realtor Certification Course is a 12-week course that takes you through that whole process. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about today, because, we start with what is an investment realtor? And people always say, are you a residential realtor? No. Are you a commercial realtor? No. They're like, well, isn't that really all there is? And I'm like, well, actually, I created a term called the investment realtor. And the investor realtor is in between the residential realtor and the commercial realtor. I focus on really houses or properties from a single family home up to like 100 units. That's really the sweet spot. It's more about multifamily investing. It's more about, apartments as opposed to, there is some mixed use. So definitely can do mixed use buildings. But really the focus in that niche is working with investors and investment properties. And a lot of them fall in the, 20 units and under. The 1 to 4s, the 5 and the 6. We'll get into what's the difference between a 1 to 4 unit, and then when you get over at a 5 unit, what happens then, right? So those are some of the things we'll look at, but that's what I call an investment realtor. There's a lot of realtors across the country doing the same thing, but I sort of honed in on this and said, this is really where I want to put a stake in the flag, and this is what I want to do for my life, and I want to help other people do the same thing. So that's how that all happened. So really it came down to when, what's the difference, right, of an investment realtor versus a residential realtor, and why even do this, and why even have investors as your clients? And for me, I've taken a lot of financial mastery courses. I've taken Tony Robbins courses. I've taken Fortune Builders courses. I have spent well over $150,000 in education, probably more, in the last several years, understanding financial mastery, real estate, investing, just really kind of grabbing a hold of it. And I still don't know everything, right? We never learn everything. We're continuing to grow and contribute in the world. But the one thing that I kept seeing was, if you have like a 401k plan, let's say, or you have an IRA, or you set up your retirement plan with a financial planner, most financial planners will not say, hey, go invest in a bunch of real estate. They don't make any money, right? They don't make any money if they say to you, go invest in a bunch of real estate. So a lot of financial planners don't even put that on the horizon. So if you look at that bucket of money, right? So if you have a 401k, you have a bucket of money, and you've saved this money your whole life, your whole career. And I just had dinner with friends of mine the other night, and they said, we're at that place where we're super healthy. They're both about to hit 60. And they said, we're both super healthy. We're kind of getting slammed for being so healthy. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, we're both easily going to hit 100 years old, but we're not sure if our savings and our retirement plan is going to last till 100 years old and have the lifestyle that we want to live. And I was like, ding, ding, this is why we invest in real estate, right? So if you have a bucket of money and you're, let's say, retired, now you're just spending that bucket of money. When you invest in real estate, you have a bucket of money, and everything that kicks off of that bucket of money is what you spend. So when you're done at the end of your life, your family, your legacy, you still have that bucket of money. Does that make sense? We're investing it into an asset that's going to hold its value and then continue to grow in value. We have tenants that pay off our mortgages. Hello, what? Right? So we have mortgages that get paid off by our tenants. Our equity continues to grow. And it's a whole different way and philosophy of really living our lives. And this is what we want to teach people. Everybody you meet, talk about this, right? Talk about the difference in saving for college. When people save for college, right? Same thing, same college savings. You save for a bucket of money, your kid goes to college for 4 years and you're like chunking it down. Oh man, I put $200,000 aside for my kid's college. And when they're done, congratulations, they don't have any debt. Good for you, good for them, great for them. However, you don't have that money. Whereas opposed if you had started when they were like, a baby and you started investing in real estate and it was kicking off money. And now you're taking that money, you're saving it for them, whatever's being kicked off, and you're growing that even further. Guess what? By the time they get through college, you still have your principal, and all that money that you used that got kicked off is not just gone, but it was actually invested. And you were, again, kicking off and paying for college based on the returns on your investments. So I love real estate, loved it for all of those reasons. So these are kind of the sort of the bigger buckets that when I really sat down to design the course, what do people really need to know? And mindset and manifestation, got to start here. If we don't have our mindset right, we can't manifest anything, right? And manifestation is all about what comes to us, what's presented to us, what comes to us over and over again. It's something that I continue to work on. I got Jim doing. And so the other thing, the second one was the language of investments. So the language of investments is a big piece. I'll kind of run through a little bit of all this. Offers and opportunities. How do we write offers? How do we present our listings? What kind of opportunities come out of that? I do something called the walkthrough of wealth, which is something I love to do, which we'll go through in this for a second. I wish I could show you the video on that because I created a whole video of walking through a property and what I look for and different things when I take an investor through and say, hey, grab the clipboard. This is what we're going to look at when we walk through this property. The investment realtor blueprint, we'll go into that a little bit too, but you need a goal, right? You need goals. You need a roadmap in order to get to where you're going. And so I work with my investors to come up with those roadmaps and to help them achieve their goals. And then, at the end, we want to see how we can create these kind of raving fans, right? And build investors for life, because investors are repeat clients, right? And that's what we love about them. I have it right here. What's the difference between residential sales and investment sales? Investors are repeat customers. So they don't just buy one property every 7 years. They buy 3 or 4 or 10 a year, depending on their goals, or units, right? Or how many doors they buy. There's a difference between doors and buying property. So you could buy one property, like a single family home has one door. You buy a 4 unit, it's got 4 doors. So sometimes you'll hear in investment language, you'll say, hey, how many properties do you own? I own 5 properties. How many doors do you own? Well, I own 20 doors, right? So each one of those properties has like 4 doors. So, so investors are really what they're looking for out there. And I interviewed, before I designed this course, I interviewed a bunch of realtors and a bunch of investors. And I had these questions. And the one thing that investors kept coming up with over and over again was, please find me realtors who understand how to work with investors, who understand investment properties, who own their own investment properties, who really have a clear understanding of the language and have confidence in working with investors. And the realtors said pretty much the same thing. I want to have confidence working with investors. So this is something that they're definitely looking for. They're looking for you. They're looking for you to have this type of experience and knowledge, and that they're confident. So education is very important. Books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read it yet, read it, pick it up, go on your phone right now, go on Amazon, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, order it. It's like one of those, it's one of those books that people see or change their life. I was just on a webinar last night. I'm in a group called Abundance, and one of the men were sharing their trajectory of how he made, over $10 million. His net worth is over $10 million. And it all started with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I must have heard that story. I don't know how many times, but everybody says, oh yeah, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Pick it up, read it. If you've read it already, read it again and again. Like that's one of those books that just getting in your soul really helps. I think somebody, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, I think somebody's off. Is that a net maybe? Oh, here we go. There you go. Thank you. And then of course, you can always get certified. So the course that I teach is you get certified as an investment realtor. Bigger pockets, bigger pockets, bigger pockets. If you're like, what's bigger pockets? Biggerpockets.com. Go there. There's free courses. There's free tools. There's free education. You can become a member and have a deeper learning. There's a community there. And if you're a realtor, do you want to be on a community of investors? Yes or yes? So Bigger Pockets is another great thing that you can do. Why do we start with mindset, right? So I remember this concept too that really struck me. And I do a lot of mindset work, continue to do mindset work. I did a mindset reading right before I did this, right? Because I want to get grounded in it. I want to be able to deliver to you. So mindset I do on a daily basis. And when I realized that nothing happens without us thinking about it first. Think about it like I'm talking to you right now. My thought, and then it happens. My thought to pick this up, and then it happens. My thought to write something, and then it happens. So if our mind precedes everything we do we want to have our mind in the right place, thinking the right thoughts? Do we want to have limiting beliefs or empowering beliefs, right? So we know that we want to have these thoughts that are leading and guiding our life. And that's why my module 1 is one of my favorite modules, mindset and manifestation. So I also love this concept of everything. We can recreate who we are in 1/100,000th of a second. I mean, I can't even snap that fast, right? So you have the ability to recreate who you are, the life you are living, everything that you're doing. So everything that you're doing, there's huge opportunity, and we can disrupt our patterns. We can disrupt our life. We can make changes if we put our thoughts and our mind to it. And it's not easy, but it is simple. So it takes some work, it takes repetition, and there's things that we walk you through. And that's why we start with mindset, because we have you do daily habits for 12 weeks. And after that 12 weeks, you're starting to pick up those daily habits, and they're actually working, and you don't even know. As soon as the mind expands, the mind cannot go back. That expansion happens. It might shrink a little, but it's never going to go back to its original position. Just think about that for a second. I mean, that's one of the most powerful things that I love, is every time I expand, I'm not going to shrink back. I might have those thoughts, but I'm not going to shrink back to that exact same place that I used to be in. So choose the life you dream of. And I'm here to tell you that I did it. Everything that I'm talking about today, I've done. Have I slipped back once in a while? Yes. Have I done things and made mistakes? Oh, absolutely. Am I here to tell you about those mistakes so you can avoid them? Yes, yes, and yes. Am I here to celebrate my wins and my successes? Absolutely. So that's why we start with mindset. So we move into module 2, and that's about language of investments. So we want to understand, there's a certain language that people say. Like, I had somebody call me one day, she was a realtor, and she said, oh, I have a buyer that's interested in one of your properties. And it was a 6-unit property. And I was like, great. Are they looking for a turnkey property, or are they looking for a value add property? And she was like, what? I'm not sure what those terms mean. And I was like, oh my goodness. So she's working with an investor who has millions of dollars in cash to invest, but she's not sure of certain terminologies that are very common for when we're working in the investment space. And so what I want to do here today is introduce you to some of those terminologies so that you are like, I know that. So at least you have an understanding. And then you can always go deeper in like the other areas that I talked about, Bigger Pockets. You can take this course, go on YouTube and start researching. So there's 3 different types of, there's more, but there's three basic investment property types. So you have your flip. So that's basically buying a property where you buy it down here, right, for a value. You add value, and then you sell that property, which is called an ARV, an after repair value, at a higher value. So your margin is really in the middle of when you added that value. That's how you gain money when you flip a property. You have what's called a buy and hold, or what we also call as rentals. So that's that's most of the landlords or investors I work with. Most of them are looking for rental properties. And then you have commercial properties, like what qualifies as a commercial property. So restaurants, stores, gas stations. I'm sure there's a bunch more than I can. Hotels, go big, go huge, right? Those are commercial properties. And as I explained, residential realtor, commercial realtor, investment realtor. We're in between those. Because can I sell a commercial property? Yes. Have I done it? Yes. Can I sell a residential property? Yes. And I have to do those all day long. But I really focus on the middle and the investors and the investment properties. Long mouse. Types of investors. This is kind of, there's all kinds of types of investors, right? So one of them in here is definitely something I came up with. So I call one form of investor the laptop investors. These are the guys, and they're mostly guys. I'm not trying to be sexist here. There's women for sure that I have as investors. I love my women clients. But the guys who are really focused on, they're on their computer every day. They're on BiggerPockets. They're on YouTube. They are like researching everything. They're creating a fund that they're going to use, right, to actually invest in. So they're watching how to do this, or they're getting so much information, and so they've got so much education. So by the time that they find their realtor who they want to work with, they're like, I'm ready, let's go. I'm going to buy my first investment property. I call these laptop investors because they've been on their laptops doing all this research, and they are ready. They know what they're talking about because they've done the homework. They've done their homework. They've educated themselves. And so they're looking for somebody, for a realtor, to help them with their first couple investments, and to really, so then you'll see, at the end of this, we'll talk about how do you create that plan for them? How do you help them with their plan? And then I have the don't kill your chickens investors. This comes from a friend of mine in Savannah, Georgia. Julie Gates, love this woman. And she said to me, Lenore, in her Southern accent, don't kill your chickens. And I was like, Julie, what do you mean? She says, well, she goes, I have so many investment properties. I've never sold one. And I'm like, you've never sold one? She's like, well, I sold a commercial property once, but I didn't sell any of the others because those chickens lay eggs, and those eggs become chickens, and they lay more eggs, and it grows and grows and grows. So you have these don't kill your chickens, right? And then you have the buy low, sell high type of investors. So those investors buy at a low price. Maybe they add some value by increasing the rents, by charging back utilities, right? So we look at the value. If we look at the residential value of a property, it's usually based on comps, right? What are the comparables in the area? Well, investment properties can be based on comps, but it's also based on how much rent you're bringing into that property. So if you're looking at your gross rent could equal 1%. Like, I'll show you a little bit of I think I go into this a little bit of what I call the 1% rule. But those investors are looking to buy low and then sell at a high, sell at a premium, take that money and do it again, maybe to 2 more properties or 3 more properties, pull out their money, buy a couple more. That's their strategy. And then you have like the hybrid one, right? The don't kill your chickens and the buy low, sell high. There's like a hybrid. They keep some, pick a couple, cherry pick a couple, and sell them all. And then you have your house hackers. Anybody ever heard of a house hacker, right? I'm sure some of you have. The house hackers are all about, you're going to buy a property, you're going to live in one side of it, and you're going to fix up the other side, rent that side out, and then rent out maybe fix up the side you were in, rent out that side, and then sell that property and go do it somewhere else. So one of the questions I get is, can you use an FHA loan to buy a property, to buy an investment property? You absolutely can. However, you have to live in that property, and there's a couple of other FHA rules that you have to follow when it comes to numbers and working it out. But a lot of FHA buyers are house hackers, because they can move into that house, and VA loans, right? Same kind of thing. So you have laptop investors, don't kill your chickens, house hackers, and buy low, sell high. It's kind of my fun little types of investors. And then we've got cap rates. Cap rate, I'll go into that, I think, on the next slide just a little bit. But the different terms that we have, because you have to know your numbers. When it comes to investment properties, and this is one of the reasons I really like working with investors and investment properties, here's the difference. You walk into a house, a residential home, and everybody's like, oh my, I love my house, right? And you're looking around, you're thinking, could be updated a little bit, right? But they're like, my grandmother made this, and my husband recreated this beautiful countertop, and you're like, okay, right? But they're so emotionally attached to it when it comes to residential home selling. But in investment property, they're not emotionally attached to it. They're just looking at the numbers. So the numbers become incredibly important when it comes to a sale. Every investor wants to get their numbers as high as possible from a rental perspective. You want to have high rents. And here's a little trick for you. I look for what's called tired landlords, right? So tired landlords own buildings for years and they haven't raised those rents. So they think they're selling the building at a higher value because to them, it's a lower cap rate because of the way the numbers work out. So with the cap rate is, let me see, I think I have to go through it here. Yeah, cap rate is you divide the NOI, which is your net operating income, divided by the purchase price. So what's NOI? So gross income, in order to understand what NOI is, you have to look at gross income. So gross income, let's say your rent, do I go through it here? Yes, suppose you have a property that I don't. So the gross income is how much money you bring in a month. So for example, if you have a rental and it's bringing in $1,000 a month and that's your rent, maybe it's a 1-bedroom because that's where we're at, right? 1 bedroom is $1,000 a month. Probably not any less than that, probably more. If it's $1,000 a month, that's your gross income. So your net operating income is the income, the gross income minus all of your expenses. That becomes your net operating income. And in order to figure out what a cap rate is, and this is what you'll hear people say, hey, is that a 10 cap? Is that a 9 cap? Is it an 8 cap? A cap rate means capitalization rate. Just in case somebody's like, what does cap rate mean? It means capitalization rate. So your cap rate is your net operating income divided by your purchase price. So I have an example down here. Suppose you have a property with an NOI, net operating income, equal to $13,000. So that's a little more than $1,000 a month. And a selling price equal to $1,000, the cap rate will be calculated as follows. Cap rate equals $13,000 NOI divided by the purchase price, $100,000. Cap rate is 0.13 or 13%. So we'll call this a 13 cap. 13 caps are like unicorns. That's what's fun about this example. A 13 cap, if you run a cap rate and you get a 13 cap, you should buy that property. Yes, you should. If you don't want to buy it, you should call it Lenore. Hey, Lenore, I found this property. It's a 13 cap. Great. Let me take a look at it. So we love, and now you have to make sure that the property doesn't need a lot of renovation, and we can go into all of that. We have to look at renovation costs and how much, remember we talked about value add, that's renovation costs, as opposed to turnkey. Turnkey means exactly what it says. Put that key in, turn it, and it doesn't need anything. So a turnkey investment property means you don't need to add any value. It means it's already been fully renovated. And a value add property means you have to renovate it. You have to add value to that property in order to get the rents where they need to be. Or it might not have a kitchen. No, that happens. How many times has that happened to me? Several times. So that's the difference between a cap rate and how you calculate a cap rate. So we have something else called a cash on cash return. So the easiest way I can describe a cash on cash return is how much cash are you investing into that property? What are you putting down, right? In the residential market, we say like, what is your down money, right? So sometimes they put down 10% or 20% in order to avoid PMI. So let's use a number. So let's say you put $50,000 down because you need 25% for your loan, right? And the property was $200,000 property. So it's a $200,000 property, and the bank that you're going with says, okay, we need 25% down. You're like, okay, here's $50,000. So the cash on cash return says, If you took that $50,000 and you invested it somewhere else, like the stock market, and you made we're just making up numbers because the stock market, I don't know about my tech stock's not doing great right now, but the the stock market returns 10%. If that $50,000 returned $5,000 or 10% a year, that's your cash on cash return. It's the same thing with real estate. You take that $50,000 and there's a calculation that you divide that 50,000 and you figure out by the purchase price, and you figure out how much is my cash on cash return. If it's 10%, let's say it's the same as the stock market. People are like, well, then I'll just invest in the stock market. Okay. Those stocks, you can't run that company. You have no ownership of that company. You can't say, hey, you need to make these changes in order for your stock prices to go up. You're just a very, very passive investor when it comes to stocks. When you actually own a property, you can look at the property. This is one thing that I teach. How can we look at that property? And if there's a low cap rate, let's say that we bought it at, let's say we bought it at like a 7 cap. How can we turn it into a 10 cap? Sometimes it's as simple as raising the rent, right? Can you increase the value of your property by raising the rent? Yes, yes, and yes. Can you look at the utilities? Maybe the owner of the property, the landlord, the last owner, maybe he included all the utilities in his rent prices. Can you then charge those utilities back to the tenants? Yes, and yes. So when you do that, you're actually raising the rate of your property. You're raising the value of your property. And that's how we can increase our cash on cash returns. So if you invest in the stock market with a 10% yield, and you invest in a property with 10% yield, but you raise the rents, charge back the utilities, now you're at a 15%. Does that make sense? Because where you bought it at, it's going to continue to go higher if you continue to improve the property and get more money out of that property, as opposed to stocks where you're just kind of you're just watching them make decisions, and you're kind of you're a player in that. And when you go to sell your stock, you want to sell it high, right? Same thing with real estate. You want to sell it high, but you have a lot more control over how to get it to that point that you want to sell it high. So then you've got ROI, return on investment, and rent rolls. Rent rolls are, basically the rent roll shows how much income you're getting and what your expenses are. So if somebody wants to see a rent roll, they're saying, are people paying consistently every month, right? Some tenants, you might be selling a property and somebody says, well, I want to see the rent roll. And then they see that 4 of the tenants, maybe it's a 4 unit, and all 4 of the tenants skipped January, somebody skipped February, somebody skipped August and September. Now you know that those tenants aren't reliable tenants. So first thing you're going to do is get those tenants out, right? And maybe the rents are kind of lower, so you want to check the leases. And if you are buying a property with leases on month to month, we love that, because that month we can say, hey, Joe, yeah, so I see your rents here, but I'm the new owner, plan on, taking over this property, and I'm going to raise that rent, right? I'm going to raise that rent for you. You have a 30-day notice that your rent is going to be going up. And Joe says, you know what? I really can't afford to pay that. I'm like, wow, sorry to hear that. But the rent is going up for this property. So, the other option is, this is your 30-day notice, and you can have 30 days to move out, and we'll, leave the place in great shape. And we'll look at a full deposit coming back to you. And that's ways that you can negotiate. And what did you just do? Yes, congratulations. The next tenant that moves in, maybe they're being charged $500 more in rent. Maybe it was super, super low. Joe wasn't consistent in paying. You bring in a new tenant, and that's how you increase the value of that property. So we also want to look at when you're, cash versus mortgage, we talked about an investor using an FHA loan, but there's also something called hard money lending, and there's also something called wholesaling. Wholesaling, we're going to stay away from today. I kind of go into it a little bit more in my course. As a realtor, you got to be careful if you're working with wholesalers, because you always want to protect your real estate license. Most important thing you have is your real estate license. So there's ways to do it and work with wholesalers, but you got to be really careful. Hard money lending is basically a no-doc loan situation where it's a higher percentage. The percentage that they're lending at is usually a higher percentage, could be 12%, 13%, 4%, 14%. If it makes sense, again, walk through the scenario, really understand how hard money works, and how that could, maybe there's a construction loan that goes along with that. But hard money lending is definitely a way that that investors can buy properties. There's hard money lending companies, and then there's private lenders. And that's something else that you should be aware of and kind of go through. Just checking my time here. So we went through this. So we talked a little bit about the laptop investors, house hacking. I do something called an investor intake form. So every time an investor calls me and says, hey, I get a lot of people, oh, I heard about your Bigger Pockets, or somebody referred me to you. I'd like to work with you as a realtor. And I'm like, great, I want to get to know you, right? So I do something called an investor intake form. And this is kind of just a partial example. There's another page to it, right? That I always give away to people within my course, because it's something that's so important. You want to get into alignment with that investor, and you want to ask them certain questions, like what type of properties are you interested in? Remember, turnkey or value add, right? What's your maximum dollar amount? Do you want to allow pets? So you're going to be doing property management. What's important to you? And these investors who have been like the laptop investors, you say, what's important to you? Cash on cash return, cap rates, or cash flow? These are three very important questions, and they usually have an answer. If they don't, you're going to help them walk through it. It's because they're going to be analyzing properties. You're going to teach them how to analyze properties, or they're going to come to you and say, I already have my spreadsheet, or I already have my spreadsheet, and you just want to understand what they're looking for and why they're looking for it, so that you can find those properties and make sure that you set up a good MLS search. Most important thing, as realtors, are we going to set up an MLS search before they sign the contract? Absolutely not. So we're putting this investor intake form together, because at the end of this call, I always say to them, okay, so here's what we're going to do next. I'm going to set up the buyer contract paperwork. I'm going to send it over to you. I want to make sure that we have paper between the two of us, because you want me working hard for you, right? So in order to do that, I want to make sure that we have a contract and that we understand. And a lot of investors will say, well, what if I'm working in other areas with, other realtors in different parts of the country? I don't even have a problem saying, okay, this is a non-exclusive arrangement. But let me tell you, if I send you something, are you going to honor that? And they're like, yes, absolutely. And usually what happens is investors don't usually leave you. Once you've proven to them that you have knowledge in this area, that you're knowledgeable, you call yourself an investment realtor, that you're committed, you've done, research and understanding how to work with investors, they're not going to leave. So that piece of paper, it's important, but it's really about the relationship and the value that you deliver to that investor. That's what's going to keep them there. So it's really all about the numbers. Like I talked about, it's not really an emotional decision. The only time they get emotional is if they're going to lose money. So we're going to make sure that we understand that process, right? We understand what they're doing and what they're looking for. But ultimately, it's up to the investor to run their own numbers. We're never going to have an investor say to us, well, you told me to buy that. No. I'm here to guide you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to find comps for you. They'll ask me, hey, is that a property you would like? I'm like, yeah. Actually, quick story. This is kind of crazy, but I had one of my investors who was under agreement for a 3-unit. It was during COVID, and he couldn't get in to see one of the properties. All the numbers were so strong. It was his first one that he was buying in this area, and he was a little nervous. And at the end, he said to me, I think I'm going to pull out. We are 5 days away from closing. And I said, here's what I'll do. I love this property. I'm going to write you an offer right now for this property. I'm going to date it where you can make this decision after you own the property. You can sell it right back to me for the same amount of money. He's like, yeah, but I'm going to lose a couple of dollars on the closing costs. I'm like, we can negotiate that. My point is, I would buy this property and I would buy it back from you. Now, I knew I had the resources. I knew I had the money. I knew I had the funding situation. You're not going to do this unless you have those things set up. But I was so confident that this was a great property. I really would have bought it. So he closes on the property. I call him up like a week later. I say, hey, let's look at my offer. Do you want to sell me the property? He goes, absolutely not. This is a great property. I can't believe I was even considering this. He got cold feet at the last minute. But it had to be his decision, right? He had to own that decision. And I just gave him another avenue, another option of what he could have done. And I was totally going to see it through. And I would have been very happy with that property, actually. So I have another tool that I give out called calculating cap rates. And it's an Excel spreadsheet where you plug in numbers, and it really makes it easy, that I actually share with my investors, because I want them to be running their own numbers. I can look at what they're doing, we can discuss it, but I want them to be running their numbers and be confident in the offers that they're making, because it's their money. So we then go into offers and opportunities, right? So an investment sale is different than a residential sale on a couple different levels. The landlords don't live on the property, so the seller's property disclosure becomes a little bit interesting. They're like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Either have their property manager fill it out. If they have a property manager, excuse me, that's a great way to go. Or they put as much information as they can into that seller's property disclosure. And it's just part of, being an investor, but you have to look at that when you're on the buyer side, handling your buyers, look at that seller's property disclosure. There might not be a lot of information in there. So what is the biggest roadblock to selling an investment property? Tenants. Right? Tenants are always I find to be the biggest roadblock, because how many times have you shown a property for one of your clients, if you're already showing investment properties, where you schedule a showing, you show up, it's been approved, you give the 24-hour notice, and then you knock on the door and a tenant's like, I don't know anything about you. I've got COVID. They shut the door. Or nobody called me, shut the door. Or they don't even answer the door. Or the keys don't work. Or they pulled the keys out of the locks. Tenants are the biggest roadblock. It's something that I spent a lot of time really formulating and working on, was my strategy when it came to me having a listing. I'm working with those tenants. So I created a tenant information sheet. I created a tenant intro letter, maybe if the links aren't working. So there's different links, or there's different sheets that I've created to let the tenant know, here's what's going on. And here's what you need to know. And should you be scared? No. Are you protected? Yes, you're protected. Your lease stays in place. Your lease stays in place and it moves along with you. You want do you want to keep paying your rent? Yes, absolutely, because that's one of the main questions. You want to be a good tenant for the next landlord, and you want to keep paying that rent. So those are some of the questions I answer, but I really bond with them, and I really treat them with a lot of respect and dignity, because it's their home. So if I can have that relationship with them, like I said, I like this 160 unit I was just thinking of. I got into every one of those apartments every single time. And I showed up with the buyer's agent because I wanted to make sure I got in there. And I said, hey, how you doing? Hey, how's it going? And talk to them for a minute. It looked really good on the other side as a listing agent looking for those buyers, and that for the buyers coming in, like, oh, I'm like, tenants are great. These are great tenants, so it helped my side for my seller, because I had a strong relationship with a tenant. So that's something that I definitely work on and do when it comes to listings. Most important numbers I've mentioned it, is after repair value. So ARV, after repair value, that's if a rental is being renovated and they're going to sell it, or if they're doing a flip, right? And they've done a lot of construction. And when you run the comps, you want to make sure when you run comps, you look for comparables in that area that have been renovated. Even if you hang your hat on one, maybe two, but even one comp, and you find, let's say you have somebody who just flipped a property and looks great, like they did a really great job. You want to find a similar property in the area, and then you want to talk to that, appraiser when they're making the appointment to go over there and say, what, there was another property that was done in the area, and just in case, here's the address. If this helps you, right? You always want to be helpful for your clients and for anybody who's working on that deal. So you want to look at current market rents. There's something called Rentometer, rentometer.com. Something I use all the time, because I can plug in an address and it shows me exactly what the rent is in that area. So I also want to know what the return on those investment numbers are. We've gone through that a little bit. How to write an offer that wins. I do one course where I teach just this, right? How to write an offer that wins. And there's a couple things that I've been doing. My offer to close rate is really high. And it's because of these couple of strategies that I do. And one of them is definitely calling the listing. agent. And I walk through this whole thing with calling them before I do an offer, asking what the seller needs. How can we write an offer to help that seller, right? Because I have a fiduciary responsibility to my buyer. That listing agent has a fiduciary responsibility to that seller. So why not work together and structure an offer that's going to work for both parties? So that I find that to be very effective, and I go through some of those strategies. So the Walkthrough Wealth is a video that I created that I actually had somebody film me walking through a property, because it's so important when you walk through a property that your investor understands what they're getting into, right? So if you walk through with them and you're like, hey, my first thing is, where's your clipboard? Where's your pad to write notes down on? Because I want them to be writing things down, because we're going to be counting windows, we're going to be looking at the roof, we're going to look at the foundation, we're going to walk in, we're going to go right down to the basement, we're going to look at the mechanicals, and we're going to go back up to the kitchen, and we're going to look at each bathroom and the bedrooms, and we're going to write down things that you need that need to be renovated, or things that need to be addressed or done, because it's going to help me with my offer, right? Because I'm thinking of these things too when we go to structure an offer. But it's really about my investor running numbers that make sense to put an offer in for that property. And we want to move fast, right? When we walk through a property, we've seen a property that day, or an investor says, hey, did you see that one in the MLS? And you're like, no, pulling it up, just made an appointment, let's go, right? I love walking through properties. So we want to make sure that we understand what we need. And then we also want to make sure with our investors, and they're like, oh, I totally want value add properties. And you're like, great, who's your contractors? And there's like, birds singing in the background while they look at you like, oh, I don't have one yet. It's something that's super important. If you want to buy value add properties, you have to have a team in place. And so maybe you can recommend a couple of people, electricians, or people that you meet along the way. You talk to every investor. I'm like, hey, who do you use for your electrician? Who do you use for a plumber? Who's your contractor? People don't give up their contractors as easily. So it's something you want to say to your investor. You got to start doing that research now, right? But you can also have some suggestions. And then we can go into, what is the investment realtor blueprint? And that's something that I've developed, that it's walking an investor through a whole year, and to plan out that year, what their goals are, what they're looking for, what kind of investor are they, how are you going to get there, what do you need to do to get there? And then you walk through and you look at how do you set up appointments and different time frames to make sure you're checking in, and follow up. It's not always the thing that I was the best at, but I know that it works. And when I do it and I follow that, oh my gosh, it's like magic. So we want to set that stage for success. And we want to review and celebrate. That's the most fun part. But module 5 is important for you as the realtor, because you write your own investment plan for your own legacy. It's something I'm really passionate about. I know a lot of realtors that just don't own any investment properties, and that's one thing I want to change. It's really one thing that this course you will understand, be able to have your own investment properties. Even if you don't take the course, do it on your own. Be that laptop investor and buy investment properties yourself. And then, we want to look at how do we keep these investors for life, because they are repeat customers. And it's not like in residential real estate where you have a bunch of people that you're constantly cold calling, referring to, reaching out to when it comes to FSBOs or expireds. It's not that. You start to cultivate a smaller group of people and get to know them on an intimate level. You get to know them and their families and what their goals are. And you over and over and over again, you are creating a lifestyle for them and really getting to know them. So it's really about relationship building. If it's something you love to do, like I do, for me, it's a lot of fun. And they teach me, right? I teach them, they teach me. It's a teach back. When I learn new stuff, guess what I do? Teach it to my investors, right? So it's this great cycle of life that I love. And those buyers become sellers, right? So it goes full circle. So, what do? You want to make sure that you're letting people know that you've been educated to handle investment properties. You want to ask your friends if they know any landlords, right? Like, hey, do you know any landlords or people that own rental properties? Do you mind if I have a conversation with them? Like, just start that. I had somebody call me from, she was down south somewhere, and she was really struggling. It was a sad story with her husband was literally dying from cancer. And she's like, I don't know what to do. and I need some income coming in. I'd love to work with investors. And so I said, go on Facebook today and just send a note after you go on the MLS and look for some properties and say, hey, I found a couple of great properties in the area. Any investors out there who want to buy some rental properties? And just go on there and try that. And she did. And she found a couple of people that she could actually connect with. So these are things that you want to do. You also want to have your elevator pitch. Tell people, are like, what do you do? I'm a realtor. I actually work with investors. I'm an investment realtor is what I say. I say, I'm an investment realtor. What's that? People are like, what's an investment realtor? And I get to explain what an investment realtor is quickly. That's my elevator pitch, right? And I'm like, I work with investors and investment properties, and I'm really about building long-term sustainable wealth and building legacy through real estate investment. And I love it. I love doing this. And this is what I do all day long. I'm a real estate investor myself. And then you also have a pipeline of buyers. So it's a win-win that way. So that's pretty much a learning level, and there's something that you can go deeper on, right? So I have the investment realtor certification course. It's a deeper dive on this investment, on what you can really learn about. So everything that I touched on, we go 12 weeks. We have 12 weeks of this course. And this course was designed by a realtor for realtors. There's different masterminds and different people that I'll bring in, like tax strategists, 1031 exchanges. And I know a private money lender or a private money raiser out in California. She's like the best there is. I want to bring her in. It's going to be fun just to keep building this community, have a community of like-minded people that are hanging out and together and supporting one another. That's my dream. That's my vision, just to have people all over this country, all over the world, really, and just have investment realtors and just have a connection and a group of people that support each other with the same kind of mindset. So in order to apply for this, I'm going to put it here in the chat. So you can go to investmentrealtor.com. And that's our landing page. And Pow and Kat, if you could put in there too, we've got a discount code today. But I also have a couple of guys on here. I hope they're on here. Jim and Exia, are you on there with me?
I'm here.
Exio, Jim, are you here too? I see you.
I'm here too.
Yes. So Jim and Exio are two guys that just went through the course. They have gone through 12 weeks. They're both certified investment realtors. They're certified for 2 years through this course. And it's something that they're very passionate about. And hopefully we can hear a little bit about what kind of experience that they had. And we have a special discount today. My people just put this up for anybody who's on the course today. We're doing 50% off. So just because you're here today, it's good till midnight. And then I think it drops down to 40%, and that stays till Monday. But I want to get as many people on here as possible. And people are like, why is this course? How do you come up with that price? And the price is, you have to invest in yourself in order to work with investors. Investors are coming in. Some of them have $1 million in cash. And so we want to make sure that we're investing in ourselves, that we're, saying, this is important to me. You as an investor with all that cash, I want to make sure that I understand terminology. I want to be an expert. I want to have a bunch of confidence. And so I want to hear from Jim and Exio, and just tell us a little bit about, did the course provide that for you? Tell me a little bit about your experience. Whoever wants to go first. And I'm not sure if we can view you here.
Well, I'm here. I'm here, and
tell us a little bit about your experience with the course.
Well, it was an amazing course. I was able to learn a bunch of. Well, let's put it this way. I had already experienced, as Lenore, I already had one investment property that I had under my belt, and which turned out to be kind of a loss for me. But in the end, it was a lesson learned. I also did a flip that kind of opened my eyes up to seeing another part of investing. And the course, kind of gave me information that I kind of knew a little words here and there, but going through your course, I kind of not only got to know the terminology, but understand it. That I think was more important, because hearing terms, you hear it all the time, people, other realtors talking, or you hear investors talking, and you kind of hear the terms, but you don't understand them. And the course gave me that experience of being able to actually understand all the terminology on a deeper level. Um, my investment property that I had bought, as you know, I mean, I ended up taking a loss on it when I sold it, because there was a lot of hidden things that I didn't look for when I was looking at the property. Um, one of the things that you go through is actually walking the property on one of the modules, and that really is what I should have done. I didn't do that. I kind of took the word of the realtor and everybody else and whatever was on paper. Um, and it really opened up my eyes to really understanding that moving forward, this wasn't going to happen to me again. Right now I'm currently back on the market looking for properties to invest in. And, that to me is, I feel more confident this time. I feel like, okay, there's nothing that I won't look at when I'm looking at a property. And when I make that decision, I know in my heart that it's going to be a right decision.
That's awesome, Exio. And what kind of tools are you using now when you're doing that?
Well, the between the P&L and the cash on cash, I mean, that in itself is priceless. It gives me an opportunity to be able to analyze a property on a deeper level, not just look at it and say, oh, this looks nice. Oh, let me go walk the property, and let me look at it. And ultimately the property can look nice and the asking price might look like the right asking price. But when you go delve deeper and analyze it, and realize, okay, well, actually at this price, I'm not really going to be making much money. Then, that kind of makes you step back a second and say, okay, what can I do, or what kind of offer can I come in with that will be fair for everybody. In essence, I want to be able to make money. The seller wants to be able to make some money, but in the end, I have to protect my interests. So I want to know that the property is going to cash flow. I want to know
Great.
that I'm going to make some money.
So 12 weeks. I remember you guys starting out, and well, Jim, we'll talk to you in a minute here. When you guys started out, it's like I remember your eyes were just huge. I remember at the end of each module, you were like, oh my gosh, that was a lot of information. And that was my whole thing. Like, let's drive it in, right? A lot of information. Let's go deeper on it. There's quizzes that you have to take. There's exercises. Then we do live deal analysis every other week. So that's how the course is set up. So we'll do one module. It's like 3.5. Sometimes it was 4 hours. And then the next week we do live deal analysis. And I loved hanging out with you guys and kind of doing that too. Because that's just fun, right? For me, that's a fun piece of what I do. That's the easy one. Oh, P&L. So he mentioned a P&L, which is a profit and loss. So I put together a calculator, a profit and loss calculator for each property. It's an Excel document. You just plug in certain numbers that are color coded, and then it spits out the cap rates, and it helps you with. And I create a little mortgage section that you can run different scenarios and different numbers to help you come up with listings, how you're going to list a property, and also for your buyers and also for yourself to have those. So that's a P&L, a profit and loss. So it's
one other thing I'm going to throw in there is that most courses, you take the course and it's like, okay, you took what you could get out of the course and you move on. I like that that deal analysis that we have, that every other week get together that we have, that basically now gives you an opportunity to kind of take the information that you learned and kind of put it in your mind and understand it a little bit deeper. And then at the same time, when we get to that deal analysis, have these questions ready so that when we get together, I can say, Lenore, you were talking about this, but I kind of caught it, but I'm still not understanding it. And that was great because we could sit there and physically spend that time learning that piece of the puzzle and understanding it. And now I'd walk away and go, okay, now I got it. It was that type of situation. And even taking it one step further from there, the fact that we can a lot of courses, you take the course, it's over, they shake your hand, say goodbye, here are the materials, do what you want with it and move on. She is dedicated herself to actually continuing even after the program's over. I mean, we've been through the program, what, 3 weeks already, I think, or maybe even 4. I don't remember the last session we had, but we've already met, twice since then, and on a separate call, and we're continuing. It's a continuing meeting of the minds. I found this investment property. Can you help me analyze it? Or I have an investor who's looking for this and looking for that, and can you help me try to figure out something? How I can help him better. He's asking me certain questions or certain things. It's just an opportunity to continue moving forward even after the program, and that to me in itself is worth the weight of the cost of the program.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like you have 2 years of hanging out as much as you want, and that's something that selfishly I love it, because I love that part of it. I love community. I love people. I love learning from people. So I love getting to continue to learn and grow with people. And I'm so glad you find that to be valuable. Thank you, Exio. I'm going to just switch over to Jim. Look at this picture that my team found of you. I don't know where they found that, but
that's from the beach. That's from my happy place at the beach. I'll take that. That's a great picture. I love it.
So tell us a little bit about kind of, your experience, just anything you want to share.
So, I mean, not to be redundant. I mean, I heard a lot of what Exio was saying about the course and the terms, right? So the terms, they're one thing, right? And it's one thing to hear the terms and learn the terms, but but to understand why they're so important, and then to exercise the application of those terms and find out, figure out how to actually use those terms and help our investors understand why those terms are important too, and how to use those metrics then to create a lens to choose the property. So there's hundreds of investment properties that are available to take a look at, but we shrink that down by using this lens of criteria to say we're only going to look at these certain set of properties because these are the ones that we know that start off with the most potential for a positive cash flow or a cash on cash return, or whether or not it's something that's going to be a profitable venture. And so then from there, like we skim off all of the properties that don't make any sense, and then we start doing a deal analysis. And like I scour the MLS every morning, and whenever I find properties that I think are worth taking a look at, I email them to Lenore and I email them to Exio, and we go over them, and so almost on a daily basis we're looking at investment properties that are and the approach is just so really savvy, right? It's just so smart. So we'll find a property and Lenore will be like, you should buy that, right? Or one of us will be like, we should just go buy that. Right? And so we start to take a look at whether or not it's something that we want to buy ourselves for an investment. But then we get so deep into the numbers and understanding whether or not this property is something that's going to make money. Let's say, for example, it's not something that I'm in a position to be able to take advantage of. I've digested this property so well that I can then turn around and offer it to my buyers and my other investors, if they're maybe in a different situation, because different properties come with different different setups, and so it's just that whole approach it kind of gives us first shot at the best properties. And if we're just not in the position to be able to put those properties on our portfolio, it gives us an opportunity to then turn around and give them to our investors. And so while we are earning money by helping our investors build their wealth portfolio, we're also taking advantage of the opportunity to build our own wealth portfolio. So earning money and building wealth are two distinctly different things, and that's something that we talk about in the course. And then there's still daily accountability between us and some level of competition between us to make sure that we're still practicing our mindset every morning, we're still reviewing properties every day, we're still talking to investors, and we're still helping people develop their plan and bouncing those ideas off of each other, and taking advantage of the support group that we have. And it's just and it's a badge of honor, really, to be able to say that you're a certified investment realtor. It's not something that you run into very often. at all. And so when you have a chance to, people ask me what I do, and I start to have to explain it to them, and they're, they're immediately interested and immediately want to know, more about it. So whatever, it's just been an amazing course. And I've been investing in property off and on since probably 1998, right? And I've had a couple of properties go really well, and I've had a couple of investments not go so well at all, and lost a couple of sizable chunks of money. And had I had this course, had I had the information, had I been armed with the information that this course provides, I'd have moved right to the front of the line in terms of that learning curve, and saved myself, probably $30,000 at least on I could think of one deal in particular.
We all have those stories, right? I mean, that's how we kind of learn, but the whole idea of this course is to really reduce the risk by understanding of being highly educated in this area. So I'm glad to hear you guys have, gotten out of this course as much as you have. And I just appreciate hanging out with people. That's the fun part for me. You guys can continue to, say whatever you'd like to say. I just want to kind of go over the schedule. We are starting another one. You can do this course. It can be a self-learning course. It can be, because there's recordings that you can go through and walk through the whole Kartra system. That's what it's built in, is Kartra. Again, you're learning this whole time, and it's a deeper learning, right? It's a commitment, right? So that's what you're doing. You're committing to this, but you're committing to yourself, and you're committing to your future. You're committing to having a different way of looking at who you are as a realtor, and expanding, and to really understanding what you're doing, and also to change a legacy in the course of what you're doing in your own life. So there is an IRCC digital planner, and my team put together, that's really cool, that anybody who has signed up for this, they can actually get a copy of the digital planner. Everybody who was on today or signed up for the course will be emailed a link. So as soon as you give us we love feedback. I'm always looking for feedback. I'm always trying to be better. I'm, good at beating myself up to make sure I'm doing the best job that I'm doing. And so that feedback form really helps. And then you get the digital planner, sort of our gift to you. So this is some of the places you can find us. I have a great team of people who are doing some of the communication out there, and so appreciate my team and what they do. They work hard, and they're in the background, always there to support. So really appreciate them and their time. So you can check us out in these different areas. And I just want to say congratulations for showing up today, because really this is the day that you can mark your calendar and say, this is the day that my life changed. Because I can remember taking a similar course that changed my life, and I'll never forget that day. And that day I made a big decision. It was a tough decision. I had to put money out of my pocket, but I did it, and it changed my life, right? And so I think when we make those big decisions, it shifts that mindset, and it says, I'm ready, let's go. So I'm looking forward to anybody who wants to reach out, say hello, to give some feedback. Of course, we'd love for you to sign up for the course, and hopefully you can do that and grab that discount before it expires. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. But I just want to say thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Oh, I went a little bit over. It happens. I love to kind of share. So hopefully, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's so great to have you here, and hope you can take away a little something from today. And with that, unless anybody has, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question now, I'm more than happy to answer some questions if anybody wants to ask me a question. How can we reach out to me? Well, I'll put in, this is my personal email. And then I believe this phone number. Howard Cat, you want to check my number, because I'm doing it off the top of my head. That number will ring my cell phone, but it'll also ring the team. That's a Google Voice number that's connected to the company. So, but it'll also go to my cell phone at some point too, so I can always check those messages or pick up that phone call. So those are the two ways that you can reach me directly. And then of course, follow us on social media and, engage with us there. And that's kind of fun too. So, unless anybody has a question that they want to ask right now, I just want to say thank you everybody for coming. And I so appreciate you all. And I look forward to seeing you soon. That's seeing us on the next one that we do, or